Hi, folks. It's good to be with you once again. We're here to talk about one of my particularly favorite operas, Mozart's Cosi fan tutte, or All Women Are Like That, is about the closest we can come to translating this title. Uh, Listen, this opera, many people regard this opera kind of like they regarded the tenor Jose Carreras in The Three Tenors. You remember The Three Tenors. I'm sure WHRO has played their recordings many times through the years. And for many people, that group consisted of Pavarotti, Domingo, and the other guy. Right? Jose Carreras is a fine, significant artist, but for many people, he never quite had the luster and the renown of the other two. Do you know Cosi is a little like that? Mozart wrote 3 glorious comedies with his librettist Lorenzo da Ponte, and for many people, those 3 comedies consist of The Marriage of Figaro, Don Giovanni, and the other one, in this case, Cosi fan tutte. This opera was kind of neglected for a century and a half. It didn't help that both Beethoven and Wagner came out and said it stinks. It really was not their cup of tea. They both felt it was an atrocious libretto in which Mozart wasted some glorious music. It was kind of unknown until it began to enter the repertoire at around the generation of World War II in the 1940s. And today it is a standard opera for all houses like Virginia Opera. We have it in our regular rotation, but still there are many people who think that Mozart tried to make a silk purse out of the sow's ear of one of the worst librettos ever written. And by the way, I'm quoting one of my students who made this remark to me in one of my lifelong learning classes that I do around the region. So if he's listening, yeah, I'm talking about you. I'm going to try to make the best defense I can for an opera that, even though people know it's a masterpiece, it's still kind of undervalued and unappreciated and underestimated. Perceptions are colored and sometimes compromised by expectations. If you see some white fluffy stuff on a plate and you think it's whipped cream and you put a big forkful of it in your mouth, as I once did at the Chickahominy House in Williamsburg, and it turns out to be mayonnaise, well, there may be coughing, spitting, and cursing going on. And yet mayonnaise is a fine food. There's nothing wrong with it. But not when you're expecting whipped cream. This may be the problem. It's not that Figaro and Giovanni are better operas than Cosi. They're different. They have a different intent and a different tone. Here's the thing. In the first 2 operas, those characters are about as complex and three-dimensional and vibrant and real as you can possibly be. Figaro, Susanna, Cherubino, Don Elvira, Leporello, Giovanni, these people, you feel like they're actual people that you come to know, friends of yours, with just as many facets and sides as Dwight Davis, ladies and gentlemen. He's a very complicated fellow, as most of you know. So the thing about Cosi is you've come to expect this degree of great, vivid realism, and then what do you get? You get a story that's like an episode of Rocky and Bullwinkle. You get characters that are flat, stick figures, one-dimensional, cartoons, absurd, nothing like real people. And you think, well, gee, I guess, everybody is entitled to a clunker now and then. It's just not as good. But let's just put it in a different perspective. Because, it's mayonnaise. It's not whipped cream. And mayonnaise is a good food. You can't have egg salad without it. I was thinking about farce. I was thinking about the comedy of manners. Some of you, I hope most of you, otherwise this will be a very lame metaphor, are familiar with a classic sitcom from the 1990s and the early years of this century, NBC's Frasier. Remember the Crane brothers, Dr. Fraser Crane and his brother Niles, elitist, a little snobbish psychiatrists, and their down-to-earth, regular Joe father, Martin Crane? Let's try an experiment. I'm going to take the plot of Cosi and translate it into a plot summary, a synopsis for what I think would be a typical episode of Frasier. That would go like this. Niles and Fraser are boasting about how crazy their respective girlfriends are about them. Martin isn't so sure and bets them that they could easily seduce the other's partner. Unable to resist the wager, they arrange for seemingly chance meetings with each other's lovers, sure that the girls will reject them. Complications ensue when both women appear eager to take them up on their offers. Yeah, that would work, wouldn't it? It's absolutely a typical episode of Frasier, although it's the plot to Cosi. And what Frasier represents, and what my big point about this opera is that Frasier is a blend of two genres of drama that I think Beethoven and Wagner weren't too familiar with: the comedy of manners and farce. A comedy of manners is a satire in which we're holding up to ridicule the manners and affectations of a social class, often represented by stock characters. The plot of the comedy is usually concerned with an illicit love affair or some kind of scandal, like, say, a wager that two boys can seduce each other's fiancés. That might work. And the plot is generally less important than the witty nature of the dialogue. You certainly get that in Cosi, you get that in Frasier. And then a farce is a comedy written for the stage or film, entertaining the audience by means of unlikely, over-the-top situations, disguises, mistaken identities, verbal humor. Farce in general is tolerant of transgressive behavior, tends to depict human beings as vain, irrational, infantile, and prone to automatism. Farce is a natural companion of satire. Folks, I'm going to start playing you some examples to show you what I'm talking about, but here's the bottom line. Think of Figaro and Don Giovanni as the Andy Griffith Show. Think of Cosi fan tutte as Frasier, or even you could even make a case for Monty Python's Flying Circus. The absurdity of keen-edged satire. Now, at the top of the show, we're in Starbucks. This opera doesn't open in a palace or a fine mansion. It opens in a coffee house. And these two soldiers, Ferrando and Guglielmo, are boasting about their girlfriends. Oh, yeah, our girls are crazy about us, man. They don't even look at other men. No way. And, of course, the old bachelor, Alfonso, is being a little bit cynical about that. The first number is a trio in which we're going to hear Ferrando start off singing La mia Dorabella capace non è. My Dorabella doesn't even have the capacity to look at other men. I'm going to let you listen to this, and I'll let you listen to his buddy Guglielmo chime in with the same sentiment about his Fior di Ligi. And then I want to show you how this this little excerpt, performs like classic opera music. It gives us information about the characters.
La mia Dorabella capace non è, fidel quanto bella, il cielo la fe, fidel quanto bella, il cielo la fe. La mia fior di ligi tradirmi non so, uguale in lei credo, costanza e beltà, uguale in lei credo, costanza e beltà. Oi grigi, ex caterra parlo.
All right, now I want to call your attention to the theme of that trio. La mia Dorabella capace non è. What is that? Is that just a lively, toe-tapping, catchy tune? How do composers decide what notes to write to give the singers to sing? Is it just based on coming up with nice musical ideas that the audience will find entertaining and attractive? Not at all. The job of opera music is narrative and psychological. Opera music always tells the story and defines the characters. Now think about that little tune. My friends, when you were a little kid on the playground, did you ever sing, "Ring around the rosy, a pocket full of posy"? Or maybe you sang, "It's raining, it's pouring, the old man is snoring." Or maybe you sang, "You can't catch me." You know that little refrain, da-da-da, that sort of fluctuates between the fifth and the third notes of the scale, da-da-da-da-da-da. Do you know that musicologists have determined that that is a universal refrain of childhood? Do you know that that is common to all cultures around the world and pretty much at all periods of history as far as we can determine? Human children are hardwired to sing that on the playground or when taunting. Now think about what Ferrando and Guglielmo just sang. La mia Dorabella. Suddenly, you understand that we're getting information about these characters. What's Mozart saying? He's saying, oh boy, are these guys ready for marriage? Do they understand women? Do they understand anything? No. They're so young. They're so naive. They have a lot of growing up to do, which is why their friend Alfonso comes up with this harebrained idea of this wager to see if they can get their girlfriends to betray them by the end of the day. And, of course, full of bravado and chutzpah, the boys scoff at this and are eager to take him up on the offer. Well, in Scene 2, we're going to meet the girls in question. And here's where, if you're paying attention, you start to understand the nature of the satire. The two girls, they're sisters. You probably knew that, Fiordiligi and Dorabella. They live in a swell house, a lovely mansion on the Bay of Naples. We see them perhaps in their sitting room or on the veranda, sipping chocolate that their live-in maid Despina has made for them, wearing swell silken gowns, fancy dresses. Wow, what a life. They live all by themselves. Do they have a family? Do they have a father? How do they afford this nice house and this maid and this chocolate? What's their means of living? Don't worry about that. You're asking questions that you're not supposed to ask because these aren't that real. They're just two nice girls living in a house. We don't even know their last names. And they're going to sing a lovely duet, which you'll think sounds like typical Mozart, typical classical music, but it might not occur to you. It's really comic. It's very funny. Here's my idea of a funny duet. Well, that didn't sound funny, you're thinking. That sounded like a very nice, pretty, sweet duet for two lovely girls. What's funny about that? Well, let me tell you what they're saying. They're looking at little portraits of their sweeties, Ferrando and Guglielmo, in cameos or lockets or whatever, however it's staged. And when Fiordiligi was saying, guarda, sorella, guarda, guarda, she was saying, look, my sister, look at my sweetheart. Isn't he sweet? Isn't he wonderful? Isn't he just the dreamiest? And then her sister chimes in, oh, and look at mine. Isn't he great? Don't you think he just looks so cute in his blue jeans? I'm translating loosely here. You get the idea. It starts to steal over you. These girls, is this what they do all day long? Do they just sit in their nice house in their nice dresses and their nice veranda sipping chocolate and looking adoringly at their boyfriends? Friends, the answer is yes. That's all they do all day long. These are not very interesting girls. They're cartoons. They're stick figures. They're two nice girls with no family, no last name, an unidentified source of income, living in a nice house, and all they do all day long is sit and look at their portraits of their boyfriends while their maid does work for them until the boyfriends come to visit. Now we see the objects of satire. It's one of the traditional objects of satire in literature. The upper class, those useless, idle, rich people who've never done a day's work in their life, have no common sense, and just sit around on their rear ends. Okay, we're making fun of the idle rich. We get it. And now the big practical joke begins. Alfonso rushes in with plan A to get the girls to betray the guys. It's terrible. I have terrible news. What will we do? He says. What's wrong? Say the girls. Your boyfriends must go off to the front. They've been called to battle in the war. Oh, no, this is terrible. The girls they're just heartbroken. They're distraught. The boys come in trudging in. We have to go. Farewell. Now, we have to stop and ask ourselves at this moment, what war? Was the kingdom of Naples at war with anybody? Well, no, there's no war. This is a practical joke. You would think that, Fiordiligi and Dorabella might say, we're at war? What war? Where's the war? But I guess they don't really read the newspaper very much, or maybe if they do, they only clip coupons and look at Dear Abby, because a touching farewell scene happens, and lo and behold, a ship comes into port to take them off to war. Where did the ship come from? There's no war. Not only that, a bunch of villagers, the people of Naples, suddenly trudge on to wave goodbye and wish them good luck in battle, and they sing a rousing patriotic song. Here's my question. Where did these people come from and why are they there? There's no war. Did Don Alfonso text message everybody in his, iPhone address book and say, meet me at the dock in half an hour, there's $5 in it for you? I don't know, but and the girls never seem to wonder about where are the other soldiers? How come this is a troop of 2 soldiers going off to war, a great big boat with 2 soldiers going on? See, it's a little ridiculous. It's satire. It's a cartoon. And the girls are distraught. Now, there's a quintet in which the girls are saying, write to me every day. And the boys say, oh, I will. I'll write to you every day. And farewell. And it's a quintet for the 2 couples and the old man Alfonso. And here Mozart has a tricky little exercise in balance of tone. Here is a quintet in which 3 of the people are full of it. They're insincere. They're putting them on. They're having a joke. But the other 2 are very sincere. They're heartbroken. How do you write one composition in which you can get across this delicate balance of tone like this? Well, I'll give you one clue. It's very pretty. It's heavenly music. It's heavenly music, and you'll hear the girls gasping out one syllable at a time because they're too distraught. They're gasping. They're so distraught. Di scrivir mi. And so they're very upset, but in the background you'll hear Don Alfonso sing this phrase over and over. Io crepo se non rido, which means if I don't laugh, I'm going to explode. Now, the thing about the tone to that quintet is that it wasn't all that difficult because, the girls are sincere, but they're sincere in a very shallow way. Because the truth is, they don't know what going off to war is. You and I live in an age where we know exactly what war is because CNN and or whatever cable news we watch shows us videos of war casualties. We know what happens if you get hit in the arm by a cannonball or shrapnel. These young ladies, they are conventionally distressed because the romance novels that they've read and basically society has trained them to understand that when your beau goes off to war, you must be upset. But war was sort of glamorous in those days. They didn't know what war was. Well, you march around. There's a lot of marching, right? And you play the fife and the drum, and you look nice in your uniforms, and it's very glamorous, and it's patriotic. They don't know about the ugly aspects of war, so they're distressed in a very pretty and kind of shallow and superficial way. So we're still at a pretty superficial level of pretty sorrow in that wonderful quintet. But now something else is coming along. And let me tell you something, folks, about this opera. I've established that it's satire. What I have failed to mention, but I will now mention, is that it's not just the idle rich that are the objects of the satire. You know who is? You. You, my sweet little audience members, and me. We are getting punked by Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. And here's what I mean. Going to see a performance of Cosi, it's like Mozart's taking you by the hand and leading you into the ocean to do some wading. And he walks along with you, and at first the water's at your ankles, and then it's at your shins, and then your knees, and then your hips, and then your waist, and then your ribs, and then your neck. And before you know it, by the end of this opera, you're going to be in over your head, and you don't know how you got there because you were just going wading with Mozart in what seemed like shallow water. And for the first time now, the water level is going to rise a little bit because we're at the shore, the boat is slipping out of sight, and we have now a trio in which we have one guy who's in on the joke, Alfonso, and the two ladies who are now quite distressed because, the boys are actually gone. It's hitting them. The reality is sinking in. My boyfriend is not here anymore. So there's this wonderful trio. It's one of the most gorgeous pieces of music that Mozart ever wrote. Soave sia il vento. It's a prayer to the gods for sweet breezes to blow their ships safely across calm waters until they can return to them. The girls are singing from the heart. I'm going to tell you there's no put on in this musical number whatsoever. This is music from the heart. But the curious thing is that Alfonso is also singing quite sincerely. A lot of people theorize, well, he's feeling remorse. He feels guilty about starting this stupid practical joke. I don't think that's it. Listen to it. Listen to how the rocking motion in the orchestra conveys the gentle motion of the tides and the waves. Be entranced by it. I wish we could hear all of it. And then I'll talk about what I think is going on with Alfonso on the other side. The equal of any slow movement that Mozart ever wrote. And why is Alfonso singing with such apparent sincerity? Well, I think it's not that he's feeling guilty or feeling remorse or wishing he hadn't gotten into this. Here's what I think it is. You know, these two young couples, they're both full of youthful illusions, perhaps delusions about romance and love. They think they're ready for marriage, but they have the idea of love, as we saw in the girls' duet, just sitting around gushing about your pretty romance partner all the time. And that's not what love is. They're very immature, and Alfonso is putting them through this exercise to make them grow up. It's time, if they're going to be married, it's time for them to grow up and understand what real people are, real people's imperfections and flaws, and go into marriage with their eyes wide open. But you know, there's a sense of regret, of melancholy that we all have to leave behind those ideals of what love might be. He understands that he is forcing them to go through a passage, and they can never return to that state of sweet innocence. That's worth a moment of melancholy. Well, the girls are distraught, I tell you. And they're very dramatic as they return to their home, and Despina is helping out with chores. And Despina, you have to understand, is a pretty street-smart girl. Despina is not the object of satire. She's not the idle rich. She's a working girl. She is full of common sense. She has no illusions about love. I always imagine that Despina lost her virginity at about age 9, probably in the back seat of her father's Plymouth, you know. And when she's asking the girls, what is wrong with you? Did somebody die? No, our boyfriends have gone off to war. Is that all? Well, so what? Well, what do you mean? We'll die if we can't see our boyfriends anymore. And Despina has some sound advice for them. Okay, I sort of had a little fun with you there. That was actually Love the One You're With, the Crosby, Stills, and Nash song, sung by a friend of mine, the wonderful blues singer Heidi Pollier. However, it's what Despina would say if she lived in 2010. If you can't be with the one you love, love the one you're with. She actually says pretty much those very words to Dorabella and Fiordiligi. She says, look, other men have everything your boyfriends have. She actually says, and this cracks me up every time, she says, your boyfriends are out killing on the battlefield. Why don't you make a few killings in the bedroom? And they're shocked, I tell you. And we like Despina because she's so down to earth. When she sings, it's not highfalutin classical music. It really sounds more like folk music.
Non vi fate sentir per carità, non vi fate sentir per carità. E basta simile, son tutti quanti, le fronte immobili, lauree costanti, al più degli uomini stabilità, mentite lagrime, fallaci sguardi, voci ingannevoli, mezzi bugiardi, son vetrinarie, non qualità, son vetrinarie.
Alrighty. So we like her, and we're always happy when she's on stage. You know, it's a funny thing. Think about what Despina said. Hey, one man is exactly like another. Other men have everything your fiancés have. Doesn't really matter. Just pick one out. I'll just make a note since we've closed our production of Rigoletto that opened Virginia Opera season. Isn't that sort of what the Duke says in Questo Quella? Doesn't he say this one or that one? It doesn't matter. All women are all the same. So here's a little food for thought. How come the Duke is a dirtbag and we despise him and think he's horrible, and we kind of like little Despina when they have exactly the same opinions to express about the opposite sex? That's sort of interesting. Well, maybe it's because the Duke is a monarch and he can throw you in jail if he has a quarrel with you or off with your head. For him to treat women like objects is an abuse of power, just like a faculty member having a fling with a student. It's a fireable offense. Whereas, Despina's at the bottom of the social ladder. She lives in a patriarchal society. She has no power, no leverage. And she's her attitudes are an attempt to kind of give men a taste of their own medicine. It's different, although it's interesting to make the comparison. Well, no sooner has she dispensed this advice and she gets recruited, by the way, to help Alfonso in this practical joke. In come two Albanians. Here are Ferrando and Guglielmo wearing turbans and pointy shoes and with fake handlebar mustaches glued onto their lips. Hello, we are from Albania. We think you are beautiful. We wish to woo you. And the girls are completely fooled. Apparently, this is a foolproof disguise. They don't recognize their own future husbands with fake mustaches glued on. Again, don't think, oh, well, this is a terrible libretto. That's so unrealistic. It's a cartoon. It's Rocky and Bullwinkle. Don't ask them to be something that they're not. And of course, the girls are revulsed and repulsed and, ooh, get away, get away. And in fact, a funny thing happens right here. The water is going to come up to our knees now because we start to differentiate between Dorabella and Fiordiligi. Thus far, they've been peas in a pod. Right now, we're going to come to understand that Fiordiligi is of sterner stuff. She's going to sing an aria. She's quite an upright, moral little thing. She was raised with good values and has a strong sense of right and wrong and is all serious all the time. Dorabella's a little more kittenish, a little more playful. She's going to go down pretty easy if you want to know the truth. Fiordiligi will be the tough nut to crack. She sings an aria, Come Scoglio, which means like a stone. My virtues are like a stone. I will be loyal to the one to whom I am betrothed. Get away, you horrible heathen. And in this aria, Mozart starts to provide her with a vocal personality profile. Fiordiligi, throughout the opera, likes to go from the bottom of her vocal range to the top, and from the top to the bottom very suddenly. And sometimes it's with a comic satiric effect, as in Come Scoglio. You will hear this device used in a comic way to indicate the moral outrage and righteous indignation, her over-the-top indignation. And sometimes we hear people talk like this. Imagine someone outraged going, well, I never. We hear people speak like that sometimes. Listen to Fiordiligi express the depths and heights of her indignation. Now, it's a compelling piece of music. It's a magnificent aria, but it's a parody. That is not serious music. If you've always thought that those big, wide leaps were a little ridiculous sounding, they're supposed to be. Go with that feeling. They certainly are ridiculous. Well, the boys are feeling like they've got this bet in the bag, but Alfonso has a plan B. He rushes in a little bit later after this initial rejection to say that it's terrible. The Albanians have taken poison out of love for you because you rejected them. And in they come, staggering around, flopping on the floor, twitching like one of those dying patients in an episode of House MD, twitching with violent spasms. And Alfonso, this is perhaps one of the more cartoonish moments in the opera. It's the people who don't like this opera do not like this scene, because Alfonso says, "Is there a doctor in the house?" And in comes Despina, the 15-year-old chambermaid that the girls live with every day, wearing glasses, a black coat, carrying a medical bag, saying, "Why, yes, I'm a doctor." She gets out a big, giant magnet. This is the point in history when Dr. Mesmer, the source of that word, to be mesmerized, was claiming that you could heal all physical ills through magnetic power. Little topical humor in Cosi fan tutte. She waves a magnet over them, and they start twitching as their arsenic is drawn out of them through the magic of magnets. Here's a little of one of the most ridiculous scenes in all of opera.
Si muovono, corrono, scuotono in più del cranio, tosto e vuotano.
Allora fronte, tenete su,
Eccoci pronte, eccoci pronte.
tenete forte, 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 coraggio. Or liberi siete da morte.
Oh, Monty Python would be proud. It's right up there with the Ministry of Silly Walks from the BBC. Well, the girls nurse them back to life, and of course now they're a little bit hooked. Now they're a little intrigued with these boys. And in Act 2, Despina and Alfonso urge the girls to, come on, give them a chance. They don't necessarily want to, impregnate you or start life over with you. They just want to, they like you and they want to spend time with you. Is there anything wrong with that? And so the boys sing a lovely serenade in which they express just that.
I'm not talking about moving in, and I don't want to change your life, but there's a warm wind blowing the stars around, and I'd really love to see you tonight.
Okay, well, maybe that's how they would have sung it if Mozart lived in the 1980s with England Dan and John Ford Foley. But the actual serenade is very much like that. In that clip you just heard, they're talking about the warm wind blowing. Well, in this serenade, Guglielmo and Ferrando are singing about the friendly, helpful breezes that will carry their song to these wonderful girls. And appropriately enough, singing about breezes and wind, they're accompanied by wind instruments. So the two sisters agree to entertain the young Albanians for a pleasant afternoon. I always loved the bit of recitative in which there's some awkward small talk, trying to break the ice. One of them says, "Well, it's warm out today." Yes, it's very warm, quite warm. A little warmer than yesterday. Yeah, I think it's warmer than yesterday. And one says, "That's a nice tree." "Yeah, I like that tree." Finally, the ice gets broken. Ferrando and Fiordiligi decide to take a stroll down a leafy lane, leaving Guglielmo and Dorabella alone. And now we get down to brass tacks, and now the water's going to get up to our waist as Mozart leads us wading into the deep waters. Because here's a little love duet. It's not very passionate. It's nice. It's chaste. It's elegant. It's a little bashful and restrained. And what starts to steal over us is that we know that Guglielmo isn't serious in this excerpt you're about to hear. We know he's putting her on and just trying to win a bet. But they're good together. There's chemistry. We understand by now that Dorabella is playful and flirty and kittenish. And now we see that Guglielmo is kind of a sweet goofball, kind of comic, kind of they're good together. The aesthetic of this duet is like one of those paintings by Watteau. Lovers sitting on a blanket out in a lovely field or in a shaded glen in the forest, sipping wine and having some camembert on crackers and looking soulfully into each other's eyes. There's no French kissing going on here. This is just restrained, elegant admiration.
L'occhietto a me gira,
Che brani!
rimira, se meglio può andar.
O proprio felice! Di glorie affetti, ne nuovi diletti, ne dolce vera,
Che nuovi
diletti, dolce vera. O proprio felice! Di glorie affetti.
Now, here's something to think about. I know that Guglielmo is just putting her on. He's not sincere. He doesn't intend to marry her. He's trying to win the bet. But I know what I just heard, and they sounded happy. They sounded at peace, content, enjoying being with one another. They sounded hippy, hoppy, happy. I don't care what you say. And that water is rising. Is Guglielmo a bad guy? Is he toying with her? Is he a villain? No, there's something else going on here. We'll get to that. Well, now we've got that tough nut to crack. So, that's it. Already, Dorabella has done what Alfonso said they would do. She has betrayed Ferrando by falling for the charm of Guglielmo. She has betrayed him. Now it's Ferrando who has to try to see what he can do with Fiordiligi. It won't be easy. We remember from her Come Scoglio aria that she is as firm as a rock, as a stone, when it comes to her sense of right and wrong. But she's wavering. She's going to come out now and sing her second big aria, Per Pietà. It is my favorite musical moment in this opera because it gets very complicated. She's feeling conflicted. Ferrando has done a good job. They enjoyed each other's company, and she is feeling stirrings of something that she knows is wrong. She's having the guilt. She doesn't want to betray Guglielmo. She wants to be a good wife, a good fiancée. She wants to do the things she knows she's supposed to do, but she can't help this. She's torn. And so she sings this aria in which she's praying to her absent future husband and to the gods of love for mercy, for forgiveness. I'm sorry for this conflict that I'm feeling in my heart. Please, I want to be a better person. And you remember those comical leaps from low to high in Come Scoglio? They were ridiculous. Now, Mozart is consistent. She still has this vocal profile. You're still going to hear leaps from low to high, but now it's not comically showing righteous indignation. Now it's showing the depths of her feeling of remorse in one of the great arias of Mozart. Well, now, that wasn't a stick figure. That was no cartoon. That was a little bit more a flesh and blood woman with real concerns of the heart, and you empathized with her. You were inside the skin and inside the head of that stick figure woman. And when she sang that last leap from very high to very low at the end of that excerpt, that wasn't ridiculous, was it? Like it was in Act One. That was a very moving moment showing the depth of her torment. And Ferrando, for his part, has been listening to this, and now it's all up to him. He comes in and pulls out all the stops. You see, when he sings to her, it occurs to us, this couple is well matched. She is a very temperamental person of strong passions, and he matches her passion for passion. He sings to her, listen to your heart, my spouse, my friend, my lover, you know that you belong with me. And this music, it's not chaste and gentle like the previous love duet with the other lovers. This one is ardent, romantic, erotic. Ladies, I hope at some point in your life someone sings to you like this.
Amen.
Well, when they began singing together there, right at the very end, as the fade out of the excerpt was heard, didn't they sound happy? A little like Roy Rogers and Dale Evans singing together, Happy Trails to You. Uh, he matched her passion for passion, and she said, Hai vinto, you've won. And he's won her heart. He really has. And yes, I guess he doesn't intend to marry her, but they sounded well matched. And you liked them together because you felt the chemistry. All right, well, now what? Guess you got to get married, huh? Girl says she loves you. You do the honorable thing. You make an honest woman out of her. So there's a marriage scene. And magically, the entire town of Naples shows up for the wedding. I guess Alfonso was using his cell phone again, sending out those text messages. And it gets a little cartoonish again. Alfonso says, is there a judge anywhere? Why, yes, I'm a notary, says Despina, coming in wearing a fake judge disguise. Foolproof disguise. They don't recognize, these girls don't recognize their own chambermaid playing judge. And just as Fiordiligi is about to put her John Doe on the marriage contract, breaking news on MSNBC. They're back. The boys have come back from the war. And the Albanians say, which boys? Who are you talking about? What boys is this? We must go investigate this. And they leave. And of course, moments later, in come Ferrando and Guglielmo home from the war. My goodness, that was a fast war. It's the same day. Nobody stops to... The girls never say, gosh, what was this? Nobody showed up. The enemy was busy. They decided to call it off. No, they're home from the war. Don't worry. Don't ask questions like that. This is not, this is not Macbeth, all right? They're home from the war, I tell you. And they say, hey, did you miss us? It's nice to see you. There's a wonderful moment. I don't have time to play it for you, when Guglielmo says, oh, that looks like a marriage contract. A marriage contract? And then the boys are outraged. Why, you wanton hussies, you have betrayed us. And the girls are in a dither. Well, it's like this, you see. I'm trying to explain. It's like this. And finally, Guglielmo can't stand it anymore. He starts singing a little bit of the love duet he sang to Dorabella, and her jaw drops. Was that you? Yeah, that was us. Whole thing was a joke. Alfonso made us this bet. He thought you would betray us. We said you never would. So that was us the whole time. That was you and those mustaches? Why, you rascals, you scoundrels. I'm outraged. And at this moment, Alfonso says, now, young people, simmer down. Boys, you go back to your fiancés, put your arms around them, and tell them you love them. And Ferrando goes back to Dorabella and says, hey, baby, you know I love you, don't you? And she says, oh, Ferrando, I love you too. And they're all happy. Just like that, they go back to their original partners, and it's time for a happy ending. And so they stand there, and they sing happy ending music. But you in the audience are going, what? So the six of them, the two couples, the old cynical bachelor and the maid, they're saying, well, it's been a crazy day. Yes, indeed, this has been a riot. But, I think we've all learned an important lesson here. Don't you agree, girls? Yes, I think we've all learned an important lesson. Well, let's go get a pizza. Don Alfonso, you're paying. Okay. And they go off, and the curtain has come down, and you're going, out in the audience, you're going, wait a minute. Stop. Come back. I don't like these couples. You're with the wrong ones. How can you just switch like that? Because here's what you realize. You've spent the last 3 hours watching these boys interact with the wrong woman. You never saw them making sweet love to their actual fiancés. You saw them making love to the other ones. And you bonded with them because there was chemistry. They were well matched. They sounded happy. And while intellectually you knew it was a joke, in your heart you liked Ferrando with Fiordiligi. And you thought that Dorabella and Guglielmo were sweet together. And they're just dropping it like that? It meant nothing to them? They're just going back. You feel like, wait a minute, this is disturbing. I liked the other ones. And then it occurs to you, oh, wait a minute. I just got punked. Like on MTV. It turns out the object of the satire was not so much those idle rich girls. It was you and me, opera fans. Here's what Mozart's doing. Our notions that we get from books and movies and TV shows about love and marriage and the whole idea of a soulmate, and that you find, you spend your youth looking for the one, that person who will make you happy, that person that makes you tingle all over when you see her, who makes you nauseous and you can't eat, and when you miss them, you can't sleep, and your stomach is churning, and you're burning, and you're freezing, and oh, when you kiss them, the earth moves, and that's how you know that you're meant to be together. It's destiny, two sparks in the universe drawn together by fate. That's what's being made fun of. You realize, don't you, that in the history of the earth throughout the eons, in most cultures, most marriages, the bulk of marriages have been arranged marriages. You get that, right? This idea that you find somebody who makes you tingle and burn and freeze and nauseous and so forth, this is a fairly modern, in the last several centuries, a fairly modern development. And you also realize that the divorce rate in those arranged marriages is pretty low, right? Those are pretty much lifelong deals. And how's the divorce rate going in our romantic age these days? Yeah, kind of a crapshoot, isn't it? Not so great. 50-50 at best. You walk out of Cosi fan tutte and you look at your partner, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your fiance, your husband, your wife, and you're wondering, is there any such thing? Does it matter? Here's my story. This December, I, Glenn Winters, will have been married for 34 years to a wonderful woman I met at Indiana University School of Music. She was pretty. I loved kissing her. She was gorgeous. She's my type. She laughed at all my jokes. She's a good musician. She likes how I play the piano. We agree on politics and religion. We've had 34 happy years together. I almost went to Michigan. They got 50,000 students. You telling me they don't have nice girls there? You telling me I wouldn't have met the one in Ann Arbor, Michigan? I often think of this. This is what Cosi fan tutte makes me think. Somewhere in the world, there's some woman walking around today that if I had gone there, I would have met her, we would have dated, we would have been married, and it would be our 34th anniversary this December. Oh, you walk out of Cosi, and you're disturbed. You're thinking, is there any such thing as love, and does it matter who you're with? Yeah, this is no Don Giovanni. This is Monty Python with a message. Fraser Crane with a serious undertone. And I hope that you enjoy Mozart's Cosi fan tutte. We'll see you next time.